Have you ever had a moment like this? It's late at night. You're lying in bed, and the room is so quiet that you can only hear your own breathing. But your mind feels like a machine that won't shut down. You suddenly remember the message you sent to a friend today. You start replaying every word, every piece of punctuation. Was it too cold? Will they think I was being dismissive? Why haven't they replied yet? You toss and turn. The more you think, the more uneasy you feel. Or this, when you were a child, if a family member came home just 10 minutes late, you couldn't sit still. Your mind would automatically start playing the worst possibilities. A car accident, an incident, a stranger. Nothing had actually happened, yet you had already lived through a tragedy in your mind. Or this, you're standing at a high place, looking down at the street below. Suddenly, a thought flashes through your mind. What would happen if I jumped? That thought shocks you. It might even make you question yourself. Why would I think that? Is something wrong with me? If any of these moments feel familiar to you, please take a breath first. You are not a strange person. And nothing is wrong with you. You are simply experiencing a very common, yet rarely understood psychological phenomenon: intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts are not about what you want to do. They are your brain constantly imagining the worst-case scenario. At its core, it's actually quite simple. It's not that you think too much, it's that you've developed a dependence on worry. Have you noticed this? Most of the time, you're not actually solving problems. You're just repeatedly thinking about them. You believe that if you think a little more, you'll be a little safer. If you analyze a bit more, you'll avoid mistakes. If you check a few more times, everything will become certain. But the reality is, the more you think, the more uncertain you become. The more you analyze, the more anxious you feel. The more you try to control, the more out of control things feel. This is the most hidden trap of intrusive thinking. It gives you the illusion that you are working on the problem. But in reality, it keeps you stuck in place. Many people ask, why can't I stop? Because your brain has gotten used to this pattern. When you start worrying, your brain thinks, good, we're protecting ourselves. So it keeps generating more assumptions, more risks, more questions. Over time, your brain becomes more and more sensitive. Even a small bit of uncertainty can trigger a chain reaction of anxiety. You become more alert, more reclusive, more prone to and eventually, you may even become dependent on this state. Because when you're thinking, it feels like you're in control. Even if that control is an illusion, but the moment you stop thinking, you feel uneasy, empty, as if something is wrong. So you start thinking again, over and over. This is the cycle of intrusive thoughts. So what can we do? The first thing is to stop chasing absolute certainty. Many people get trapped in intrusive thinking because they want an answer. One that is completely safe, completely correct, completely risk-free. But that kind of answer has never existed. You check the door lock 3 times because you want to be 100% sure it's locked. But the problem is, even if you check it 10 times, you still won't feel truly at ease. Because what you're chasing is not a fact. It's a feeling. And that feeling has no end. So you need to accept one thing. Uncertainty is part of life. You can lock the door and tell yourself, maybe there's a risk, but I'm willing to accept that uncertainty. Not because you don't care, but because you refuse to be controlled by it. The second thing is to learn not to engage. When a thought appears, did something happen to them? Are they talking about me? Did I do something wrong? You don't need to prove it. And you don't need to argue with it. You just need to notice it and let it pass. Like a cloud in the sky, it appears, you see it. But you don't need to grab onto it. Many people get stuck because they take every thought too seriously. They believe, if I thought it, it must mean something. But in reality, your brain produces countless thoughts every day. Most of them are meaningless. You don't need to believe all of them. And you certainly don't need to respond to all of them. When you stop responding, these thoughts slowly lose their power. The third thing is to be a little gentler with yourself. People who struggle with intrusive thoughts are often very hard on themselves. They expect themselves not to make mistakes, not to have problems, not to let anything go out of control. But you need to understand this. You are not a machine. You are a human being. You will worry. You will feel afraid. You will feel uneasy. That is completely normal. You don't need to blame yourself for these thoughts, and you don't need to force yourself to get better immediately. Change is a process, not a command. Maybe today, you will still check the door lock repeatedly. Maybe tomorrow, you will still But as long as you begin to recognize this is intrusive thinking, not reality, you are already on the path of change. And finally, I want to tell you something very important. You are not dependent on thinking. You have just gotten used to using thinking to create a sense of safety. But true security never comes from how much you think. It comes from whether you can still trust yourself, even in uncertainty. So, the next time that thought appears, don't rush to fight it, and don't rush to solve it. You can gently say to yourself, I see you, but I'm not going with you. Then bring your attention back to the present, back to your breathing, back to what you are doing. Slowly, you will begin to notice that the thoughts which once felt suffocating are becoming lighter and lighter, and your life will begin to feel quiet again. Not because the world has changed, but because you have finally learned not to be controlled by it.